Today I am rectifying that. So before going to its proof, let us recall the zeros are isolated, this theorem or this corollary of the uniqueness theorem for a disk. Of course, uniqueness theorem for a disk is like that. Now, if F is analytic in a disk here, and Zn is a sequence of distinct points converging to the center, and if these Zn's are zeros of F for each n, then F has to be identically equal to 0 throughout this disk. So this is uniqueness theorem for a disk. Now, using that, we already proved that zeros are isolated. That means when F is analytic at a point, say A, then we have two possibilities, either first one or the second one. First one says F is identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of A. If this is not happening, then F will be non-zero in some punctured disk of A. Only these two possibilities will hold. Okay. So using these two ideas, we are going to prove or some construction in the proof of next theorem, that is uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains. So what this theorem says, we have a domain here where F is analytic and Zn is a sequence of distinct points converging to a point inside domain. And now if Zn's are actually zeros of F for each n, then F will be identically equal to 0 throughout the domain. This is uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains. Okay. Now, considering the idea from this previous corollary, the zeros are isolated. What we do, we are decomposing actually the domain, the main domain, into two sets, two parts. First part is capital A, where we are collecting all points zeta here in the domain, so that F is identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of zeta. Okay. So actually here was the mistake. Yesterday what I did, this point A, I took same point here in place of zeta here. That is the problem. And I was collecting these zeros of F here in some neighborhood of that. That was the problem. Okay. So here, pictorially I will explain. The second, second one is just its opposite. We collect all points in the domain xi, where xi is not in A. That means F of F is not equal to 0 for all z in some deleted neighborhood of xi. So these two collection actually we are doing. So pictorially, let us see. Suppose I take zeta here. That means if I find some neighborhood, so that inside the neighborhood, F is identically equal to 0. It goes to 0 for all point. Similarly, here another xi. So if I find a neighborhood where inside this, F is identically equal to 0. And B is saying that other way. So we have a xi point, collecting all xi, these are the point. So that in some deleted neighborhood of that xi, F is actually non-zero for all z. Whatever z we take in this deleted neighborhood, F has to be non-zero. So that way, B is actually constructed. That means this union of all these points inside this neighborhood, the top two, they are actually A, and union of this bottom two such type deleted neighborhoods, they are actually points on that, they are actually the set B. So in fact, all points in this upper neighborhood are actually in A, we can say, because if we fix one more point here, if we take one more point inside this neighborhood, we can find another neighborhood which is inside that neighborhood. For that also F is 0, because F is 0 in this bigger neighborhood. So therefore all points including zeta will be in A, okay, in this picture. Similarly here also for B also. So therefore A union B is the whole domain. Therefore, because these are the only two possibilities, by that zeros are isolated, that theorem, that corollary, by corollary 3. So therefore, because of that, we can construct A and B like this, which are in fact decomposition of that whole domain D into two parts. Okay. These are my construction. Now we have to prove that A is open set, B is open set, A and B, they are disjoint. Disjoint is very clear. There is no issue at all. And A and B are actually open set. We need to prove. Now, since A union B is the whole domain D and D is domain means it is connected set, then the same argument, that one of them should be empty. Then finally we'll prove that B is empty because A will contain the point. Which point will contain? In the statement we see this sequence is converging to the point A. So this point A will be actually inside the set capital A. That was the main thing. So here was the mistake yesterday. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to explain now in detail that by corollary 3, whatever point we take in D domain, that is either in A or in B, right? Because we have only two possibilities by corollary 3. So therefore, whatever point we take in D, we have two possibilities. Therefore, that point will be either in A or in B. All right. Then one can prove that this A and B are actually open sets. Disjoint is clear, and union is actually whole D. It is clear, and only open sets is also clear from this picture. You can see, because if we take, for example, A is open. I am going to explain here. Suppose we take one point arbitrarily on that A, then we can find a neighborhood around that, so that the neighborhood is actually inside this neighborhood, bigger neighborhood. So therefore, that is also in A. So therefore, we are finding one neighborhood around that point, which is in A. Therefore, A is open. Simple. Because those points are also coming to 0 by definition of A. So therefore, A is open. Similarly, one can prove that B is also open. Similarly. So therefore, it is simple that D can be decomposed into two parts, that is union of two disjoint open sets. Now same argument, since D is connected, either A or B must be empty set. Now we are going to show that the limit point, the sequence is converging to the point A, that is in capital A. Therefore, capital A is non-empty. So B must be empty. That's the argument here. So here we are going to use uniqueness theorem for a disk. Look at the picture. My point A is here, for instance. Now I can take a neighborhood where, because Zn was converging to the point A. So when I take a neighborhood, then we can find a subsequence from that sequence. Subsequence Znk, that's written. There exists a subsequence Znk of Zn, which converges to A in a neighborhood of A. We can find one neighborhood. This is happening. But Zn's are actually zeros of F. Therefore, Znk also 0. Now, uniqueness theorem says that F will be identically equal to 0 throughout this neighborhood. Uniqueness theorem for a disk. Because your neighborhoods are actually disk. So therefore A, this point A, by the definition of capital A, this small a has to be in capital A, by the definition of capital A. Because what was the definition of capital A? Because F is identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of the point A. Now we are going to, we just proved it. We are taking some neighborhood of small a, then we prove that F is identically equal to 0 by uniqueness theorem for power series. So therefore, the point small a has to be in capital A by definition of capital A. So therefore, A is non-empty, and hence capital B has to be empty. So that's it, the proof. Therefore, A is equal to D. So since in A, F was identically equal to 0, therefore F is identically equal to 0 throughout D. So this completes the proof of uniqueness theorem for a general domain. Any question, please? Is it clear? Who was asking yesterday? A couple of. Is it clear today?
Yes, sir. It's clear now.
Okay, good. Thanks. So now I am going to move to today's main topic, that is power series. and Taylor's theorem. Both we will be discussing, and some examples, related examples. Let me switch to the next presentation slide. Just a minute. Yeah. So is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Oh, something is wrong.
Now it's okay, Suresh.
Sorry, I need to change this. I need to open another file anyway. Sorry for the interruption, but I already almost done. Yes. Yes. So now we go to power series. All right. This is visible, right?
Yes, Suresh.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. Thanks. So power series, you see, it is of the form like this. Of course, here I have chosen center at origin, but one can take center some arbitrarily some point. Let's say A. Then Z minus A factor will come here. Otherwise, this is, of course, without loss of generality, we can assume the center to be origin. Where a power series is convergent, there will be some radius of convergence. All these things will be discussed today. And then finally, we prove Taylor's theorem, and some examples we'll discuss. How to obtain radius of convergence from several situations or so on. Anyway, so when we talk about power series, we must talk about its convergence. So how to study convergence of a power series, or in general a series? In that case, we have to take nth partial sum. Nth partial sum we take. Then if nth partial sum is convergent, then we say that power series is convergent. So one example, very elementary example, it's well known. So let us consider this geometric series. 1 plus, I mean, all the coefficients can be complex number, but here in particular, all the coefficients are 1. If we take, this is actually geometric series, and its nth partial sum is actually like this, 1 plus z up to z power n. And this has this formula we know from high school. We know this. Now, why this goes to, when n tends to infinity, this goes to actually 1 over 1 minus z. For mod z less than 1, this will go to 1 over 1 minus z. That means z power n plus 1 has to go to 0. Whenever n tends to infinity for mod z less than 1. So then we can have this series actually converges to 1 over 1 minus z for mod z less than 1. So this is again, well known. So since z power n tends to 0 for mod z less than 1, this is very elementary property. Even, in real analysis also it is true. One can check. Then from there we conclude that the geometric series converges to 1 over 1 minus z for mod z less than 1. Of course, it will be divergent outside. So anyway, so that's what, we are going to discuss. The Abel's theorem. First is actually the Abel's theorem for power series. So what we find here, that every power series converges inside a circle and diverges outside the same circle. Okay. Of course, except that it may happen that the series converges only for z equal to 0. That means radius of convergence can be 0. And it converges for all. In fact, radius of convergence can be infinity. That can also happen. So this is what the Abel's power series theorem we call. What is this? Whatever power series we give, of the form, for instance, about z equal to 0 I have taken. So of this form, then we can always get a number r. This r is actually called radius of convergence. R can be 0, R can be infinity, R can be any finite quantity. So with the following property, what is this property? The series absolutely convergent, series is absolutely convergent for every Z within this disk. We can find a R so that within mod Z less than R, this series will be absolutely convergent. Power series will be absolutely convergent. But if we have some number in between mod Z less than or equal to rho, but rho is less than R, capital R, then in this compact set, the series will be convergent uniformly. The convergence is uniform within this. This is the first property. So second property is outside the disk, outside this disk, these terms of the series are actually unbounded. Therefore, the series will be divergent. And inside that, whenever we find that inside this series is absolutely convergent, in fact, uniformly convergence in the compact subset of this main disk, then what happened? The sum of the series is an analytic function. That means this power series, when we have a convergent power series within a radius of convergence, the converging function will be analytic within this disk, within the radius of convergence. That is the third part. And the derivative can be obtained term-wise, by term-wise differentiation. That means term by term derivative we can do. And the derived series also has the same radius of convergence. So within the same radius of convergence, the derived series, that means term by term differentiation, we get another series. That series is also convergent within the same radius of convergence. These three are there. And proof is very interesting. I'm going to discuss, because this is the main theorem in power series. Of course, there are many other small results which are useful to derive radius of convergence also. But here also, this is also helpful to derive radius of convergence. How, that we are going to discuss. So here it says existence of number R. They are existent number. That means we need to construct what is that R. Then we have to verify all this property. First is absolutely and uniform convergence. And second is divergent. Third is term by term differentiation is possible. And the converging function will be analytic. So here, of course, analytic means differentiable, because we are talking about an open set, mod Z less than R. So both are same. But when analyticity at a point means it should be differentiable in some neighborhood of that. So here, therefore, differentiability will be verified. And yes, of course, radius of convergence will be following very easily. And term by term differentiation, there are three parts we'll be discussing. Okay, so this mod Z equal to R, the boundary is called the circle of convergence. Circle of convergence. But on the circle of convergence, we do not have any information in this theorem. On the circle of convergence mod Z equal to R, we do not have any conclusion. Sometimes it may for some point it may be convergent, and other points it is divergent, something like that. It may happen. We don't have any conclusion, but depending on the particular function of series. Now this R, this radius of convergence will be constructing through this formula. This is called Hadamard's formula for radius of convergence, or sometimes it is called Cauchy-Hadamard formula for radius of convergence. And we shall show this, Abel's theorem. All the properties are true if we choose this R. 1 over R is actually limit supremum of, or lim sup of nth root of modulus of an. This is root test. From the root test, it follows. And this is, of course, known as Hadamard's formula for radius of convergence, I mentioned. So limit supremum is actually 1 over R. That is, so that means R is actually reciprocal of this limit supremum of nth root of modulus of an. Let's see how it follows. Proof of first part. First part means absolute convergence, and on each compact subset, the convergence is uniform. So for now, if mod z less than r in this region, but we can choose one quantity rho in between mod z and r. So this so that mod z is less than rho and rho is less than r. Okay, we can choose. Of course, here we need to omit r equal to 0. R has to be strictly positive, then only it is possible. Otherwise, both will be 0. There is no meaning. So mod z is less than rho and less than r. We can choose rho. We can choose so that this is happening. Now, since rho is less than r, then 1 over rho will be bigger than 1 over r. Then, by definition of limit supremum, we can find an n naught, so that because 1 over r is the limit supremum of this quantity. So therefore, 1 over r will be bigger than equal to this quantity, modulus of an power 1 by n. But 1 over r is less than 1 over rho. So what is happening? Then modulus of an is less than 1 by rho power n. Okay. So from first and last term with the inequality, strict inequality, we have this. Modulus of an is less than 1 over rho power n for all n bigger than equal to n naught. So this is following from limit supremum, and then by this relation we are getting this quantity. Now you see, then we come to the original terms we have in the power series an z power n. If we take absolute value, because we are going to prove absolute convergence, so just we take absolute value. Then modulus of z is there, and an mod is less than 1 over rho power n. So therefore, mod z over rho whole power n is coming for large n bigger than or equal to n. Then what is happened? This right hand side, if we take through the comparison test, right hand side in series, that is actually convergent, because mod z by rho is less than 1. So that will be actually geometric series again. So therefore, by comparison test, this summation modulus of an z power n has convergent geometric series measure. This is the wording is actually this right hand side. After taking the series, it is a geometric series measurand for this original series in absolute value. So therefore, this is convergent. So absolute convergence is very trivially proved. Any question? You can also note down your points if you are not asking now. At the end, last 10 minutes, we can discuss. That is also another possibility. Of course, you can ask me in between if you have any question. Okay, if there are no question, I go ahead for the second part. The first part, absolute convergence, is done. And in the first part, there are two parts again. One next is uniform convergence part. To prove the uniform convergence of the power series within this compact subset of the original disk. So what we do, within that we can choose, within this rho and r, we can choose a number delta. And what happens, using that, what happens? Modulus of or absolute value of an z power n is actually absolute value of an. Then we write absolute value of z power n. Now what happens? How does this follow? An mod is less than, anyway, so mod z is actually less than or equal to rho. So therefore, mod z power n is less than or equal to rho power n. That part is done. Now an mod is less than or equal to 1 over r power n. Is that clear? An mod is less than or equal to 1 over r power n is coming from here. Look at the second block in this page. From here it will follow. Okay, by the definition of limit supremum. So therefore, this inequality holds. Now what happens? 1 over r, from this relation, 1 over r will be less than 1 over delta. So just we take power of that n. So 1 over delta power n into rho power n is coming. So this is nothing but rho by delta whole power n. Rho by delta whole power n. But rho by delta is actually less than 1. From this inequality, rho by delta is less than 1. So again this in terms of series, this will be actually convergent. Now we can apply Weierstrass M test. Similar to real analysis, in complex analysis also Weierstrass M test is there. Summation Mn converges. Then original series will be convergent absolutely and uniformly. Okay. So therefore here we need uniform convergence. Therefore it is coming, since rho over delta is less than 1, implies the convergence of the series, this one, by Weierstrass M test. The power series is uniformly convergent in this compact set. Okay. So this ends proof of the first part. Okay.
And sir?
Yeah, please.
And sir, which convergence is stronger, means uniform convergence or absolute convergence?
I mean, uniform convergence will be more stronger because it converges for all, uniformly. If we look at the definition, for all point we must get a single delta. Therefore, it is more stronger. Of course, uniform convergence or absolute convergence all implies convergence.
Yeah. And inside the disk, series is uniformly convergent.
Yeah,
inside.
Compact disk. Yes, here compact disk. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So second part, divergence. We need to prove outside the disk. Outside the disk, we need to prove the divergence. So that means first part was there. In this second part, the first part is unbounded. Terms are actually unbounded. Then series will be consequently divergent whenever mod z is bigger than r. Let's see. So same way construction, we choose some alpha in between. That means mod z is bigger than alpha, but alpha is bigger than r. Okay, we choose one number, alpha. Then what happens? 1 over alpha will be less than 1 over r. But 1 over r is limit supremum of absolute value of a n power 1 by n. By definition of construction of 1 over r. There are arbitrarily large n such that this one, again, because lim sup is actually 1 over r, or this is bigger than 1 by alpha, then we can find arbitrarily large n so that this quantity, just absolute value of power 1 by n will be still larger than 1 over alpha. This is always possible by definition. And equivalently, this an mod is bigger than 1 over alpha power n. This is coming. For large value of alpha, I mean arbitrarily large n. This is possible. Okay. So now we see modulus of an z power n mod is actually, mod z is there, I keep as it is. Then an modulus is bigger than 1 over alpha power n. That's what we just got it. So that I put here. Of course, this is for infinitely many large n. So, but this quantity mod z over alpha is bigger than 1. Look at mod z over alpha mod is bigger than 1 from this relation. So therefore, this quantity will be bigger than 1. So for infinitely many n, large n, and therefore this each term, terms are actually unbounded. So since these are unbounded, in fact they are bigger than 1, then this limit cannot go to 0. So therefore by the theorem, if nth terms are 0, then series is convergent. By that theorem, necessary condition for convergence of a series. So since this limit is non-zero, nth term is non-zero, So series will be divergent. Because terms are actually unbounded. Each terms are unbounded. That way also directly one can write the original series is divergent. Okay. So this proves the second part. So third part is main, and which is quite interesting. I like it. So let's discuss the third part, proof of third one. So in this part, there are three parts. Okay. First is sum of the series is analytic in the disk, where it is convergent, and derivative can be obtained by term differentiation, and then derived series has the same radius of convergence. There are three parts. Okay. Indeed, this derived series has the same radius of convergence follows from this single line, one sentence. Because derived series, that's mean derivative, term by term derivative, if we take, assuming that first two we have proved, of course, that is the reason. The third part is derived series has same radius of convergence. That we can prove by assuming that first two, let us suppose we have proved it. Of course, we are going to prove it. By assuming that, one can see that n z power n minus 1, summation n equal to 1 to infinity. This has radius of convergence r, because if we take the root test, that Hadamard formula, n power 1 by n, this limit is equal to 1. So therefore, limit supremum is also 1 here. Then remaining an power 1 by n limit supremum is already 1 over r. So therefore, radius of convergence is r. So straightforward. And this limit is very well known from real analysis. So therefore, it remains to prove that term by term differentiation is possible and sum of the series is analytic function. That means differentiability we need to prove. All right. Look at this. How to deal? First, we split or decompose this function on the series into two parts. One is nth partial sum, another is remainder term. We say remainder term. So Sn is nth partial sum and Rn is the remaining term. This way, we write f of z or the series is equal to Snz plus Rnz. Okay. In this mod z less than r, because this series is convergent, therefore we are able to write this is equal to f of z for some f. Now see, Gz we denote by this term by term differentiation of Sn, because Snz is just the polynomial of degree n. Nth partial sum is a polynomial of degree n. So therefore, term by term differentiation for this polynomial we can do. Then finally we take the limit. Term by term differentiation n z power n minus 1. Then finally we take the limit of this derivative of Snz, then we get this information. That means Sn prime z, as n tends to infinity, this is actually the derived series. But we need to prove that this derived series, if we denote it by Gz, this is nothing but f prime z. F prime z. That we have to prove it. That is, therefore, term by term derivative is possible, and also that will give you analytic function, because the differentiability we are going to also prove. So now we have to prove that Gz is equal to f prime z. That we are going to prove. Okay. Gz is f prime z. Then differentiability follow. Also,
sir, I think here is a mistake.
Yeah, please. Where is?
Here is Sn equal to a0 to an.
Yeah.
Gz is n to infinity. Then you go on to infinity. This term is not equal.
No.
Oh, sorry, sir. Okay.
The limiting value, limit of this I am denoting by Gz.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. After taking the limit, I am denoting by Gz. So that is the reason Gz has to be f prime z, because f is in terms of infinite series. So therefore, G has to be infinite series. So therefore, infinite series I am denoting by Gz. Okay, good. So if we want to prove f prime z is Gz, then what happens? I am taking one arbitrary point z0. then just I'm using definition. F prime z naught means limit z tends to z naught, f of z minus f of z naught by z minus z naught. This is my f prime z naught. If I prove this is equal to g of z naught or for an arbitrary point z naught, then this is proved, whatever we wanted to prove. So that means f is differentiable in this mod z less than r. That means it is analytic there. And term by term differentiation is possible already. After that, it will be followed automatically because of the previous this statement. It will be followed once you prove. Therefore, it is enough to prove this limit. This is equal to 0. How? Look at here. Because we already splitted f, or the series representation of f, into two parts, SNZ plus RNZ. So just substitute here. F of z is SNZ plus RNZ, and f of z naught is SNZ plus SNZ naught plus RNZ naught. And we have denominator z minus z naught factor on both sides. It is there, and gz naught is already there, negative of gz naught. And then what we did here, Sn prime z naught we have subtracted and added, nothing else. So this quantity, whatever limit of this quantity we want to prove 0. So therefore this quantity we are first rewriting into 3 different terms, sum of 3 different terms. Now we are going to prove each term is in modulus is less than epsilon by 3, for example, less than epsilon by 3 for every epsilon positive under certain conditions. Then finally we take modulus of this, then it will be tending to 0. Since epsilon is arbitrary, we can say that this limit will be 0. Of course, whenever z tends to 0, that means z minus z naught mod less than some delta. That will be there. And of course, this is also depending on n. So that n also we need to be very careful. Let's see. So 3 terms will be there. So each term in modulus less than epsilon by 3 we are going to prove from the property, whatever information we have. This is what now we shall prove that for every epsilon positive there exists a delta such that this modulus is less than epsilon whenever z minus z naught mod less than delta in the delta deleted neighborhood. So we are going to prove this inequality by definition of differentiability, or the limit. Okay. Now first the remainder term we take. Okay, remainder RNZ minus RNZ naught over z minus z naught was there. If we simplify this, simply this is coming. AK will be there outside everywhere, and first term is z power k minus 1, then z power k minus 2 z naught, and so on, z times z naught power k minus 2 plus z naught power k minus 1. This term will be there, remainder term. Look at RNZ once again. RNZ is summation AK z power k. K equal to n plus 1 to infinity. Okay. So therefore, AK z power k minus 1 is there, first one, and then so on, continue. Because we are subtracting Rn z naught. After simplification, this is coming. Because simplification is given here, because z power k minus z naught power k. We can factorize z minus z naught will be there, and then remaining term is this one. So remaining term is actually this factor. Because z minus z naught is divided other side. So therefore, this factor is coming here. So this is what. Now what happened? We need to take modulus. So when we take modulus, first let us check for some finite sum, and then finally you can take a limit. That is the best way to do. So therefore, right hand side sum we need to consider. For mod z and mod z naught less than or equal to rho, and for m bigger than n, we consider this right hand side in absolute value. Okay, k equal to n plus 1 to m, where m is bigger than n, and then whatever terms are there as it is. Now we can use this triangle inequality here, modulus we can bring inside. Then again each term, because modulus of z is less than or equal to rho, and modulus of z naught is also less than or equal to rho we are taking. So then what happens? This is mod rho power k minus 1, here also rho power k minus 1. If we multiply these two after taking modulus, all terms rho power k minus 1 will come, but k times, therefore k is occurring here, and ak modulus will be there, because ak can be complex and rho power k minus 1 will be there. So in sum, so now we can take m very large, infinity, goes to infinity. Then we can have this remainder term, this difference or this ratio in absolute value is less than or equal to this one. Okay. So therefore, letting m tends to infinity, we obtain this quantity less than or equal to this, and now we have infinite series. Now look at this right hand side quantity is actually a remainder term of one convergent series, in fact uniformly convergent, and there also it is absolutely convergent. Or we can say this is a remainder term of remainder factor of some convergent series. So we can say this is derived series. We have already proved, of course, one can verify similarly that this has also radius of convergence, same thing, and within that it is uniformly convergent. So therefore, because the expression this is the remainder term in the convergent series, this is convergent series, one can similarly verify it is real series. So therefore here we need to apply Cauchy's criterion for uniform convergence, because remainder term will actually go to 0. So in that sense, this modulus is less than epsilon by 3 for every epsilon positive, but for some n naught. And this is true for all n bigger than or equal to n naught. Okay, that part I missed to write. For all n bigger than or equal to n naught, I should have written here. Anyway, I'll add it. This is coming actually from Cauchy's criterion for uniform convergence. This is the Cauchy's criterion. Remainder term will be tending to 0. Secondly, so therefore remainder term absolute value we got less than epsilon by 3. Now secondly, this we have already proved that limit of Sn prime, nth partial sum at z naught is actually g of z naught, according to our definition of gz. So by definition of this limit, Sn prime z naught minus g of z naught mod less than epsilon by 3 for some n naught and for all n bigger than or equal to n naught. All right. So therefore, another term in absolute value less than epsilon by 3 we proved. Now finally, one more term is remaining. That is in terms of Sn. So what is happening? This Snz minus Snz naught by z minus z naught minus Sn prime z naught. This quantity modulus less than epsilon by 3 we have to prove whenever z minus z naught mod less than delta. In fact, this means the limit of this quantity is actually Sn prime z naught when z tends to z naught. So both are same. So this we wanted to prove by the definition of derivative. So therefore, combining all these three inequality, actually this follows by the definition. Okay, yeah, this was the derivative, right? Yeah, this is the derivative definition. So yeah, from the definition of derivative, this follows. Okay, because this quantity is actually equal to this by the definition of derivative. Now we use limit definition, so that for the same epsilon we can take and we can find a number delta such that this quantity is less than epsilon by 3. It follows straightforward from the definition of derivative. Now 3 quantity, we proved absolute value less than epsilon by 3. Then we just add it, and then finally the original absolute value is less than epsilon. So this is what, combining all these 3 inequalities, we finally obtain the required relation 3. What is the required relation 3? Yes, this relation we wanted to prove. And this is splitted, like this. So each term in absolute value less than epsilon by 3 we proved. Then finally this quantity is less than epsilon. This quantity is proved. So, so therefore, what happens? We have proved that f prime z naught exists. That means it equal to g z naught. So this completes the proof. Okay. Any question, please?
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Sir, in that compact disk, we have shown uniformly convergence, no?
Yes.
Sir, can we use that proof to show that it is uniformly convergent on every compact subset of that? Not only disk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That is true. I already mentioned this statement. Okay. One is compact subset of this. Yes, because we can have one disk outside, containing the compact set. So that's it. Anyway, so some remarks here. The third part of this Abel's theorem, what happens, also says that power series with positive radius of convergence has derivatives of all order. Here also, because term by term differentiation, first series is given, it is convergent within mod z less than r. Its derivative, term by term derivative, its derived series also convergent for mod z less than 1. Again, go ahead. Next derivative, term by term differentiation also has radius of convergence r. Same way we proceed. So it will have derivative of all orders we can have. And all derived series are actually has radius of convergence r. So therefore, term by term differentiation, once we proved term by term differentiation, we can do like this. Finally, fkz is actually k factorial ak, and all these things are happening. So from here you see, if we put z equal to 0, then only the constant factor k factorial ak is remaining. That means kth derivative at 0 over k factorial is actually the kth coefficient ak. From here it follows. That is actually Maclaurin series. So we see from the last line that ak is this one, and the power series becomes like this. Power series becomes like this. So this is exactly the expression which I already shown you in the statement of Taylor's theorem. That is coming again here. Okay. So here, this is the familiar Taylor-Maclaurin development. Maclaurin actually developed along with Taylor. And here we proved, what we have proved, that every Taylor series is convergent to an analytic function within its radius of convergence. That is the thing we proved. Taylor series is there, in fact power series is there, and it is convergent within the radius of convergence to an analytic function. But what can we say about converse? That is actually Taylor's theorem. Taylor says analytic function can be written in terms of power series, but within its radius of convergence. Where, about the point in the domain, we take the largest disk inside the domain. Within that disk, every analytic function can be written in terms of power series. That is Taylor's theorem. Okay. Anyway, so this is the statement we already discussed. But here I put this formula for nth coefficient, this integral formula, which is coming from Cauchy's integral formula. In fact, the whole proof of this theorem depends on Cauchy's integral formula. Okay. So of course, this coefficient formula is straightforward from Cauchy's integral formula. This is actually Cauchy's integral formula. And then now we are going to prove that if f is analytic in a domain containing a point, then it is possible to write f in terms of power series like this. But within its radius of convergence, where this is the maximal disk around A sitting inside the domain omega. Okay. That means from center we take the nearest boundary point. So that is the radius. Okay. This is Taylor's theorem. Now some remarks, before going to the proof of Taylor's theorem, some remarks we discuss here. Like an, an is stated here, mod z minus a mod equal to r. R is less than delta. Delta is already there. So here we are taking circle. But if we replace this circle with any simple closed contour.
Sir,
yes, please.
Fz is analytic means its derivative exists.
Yes. Fz is analytic in a domain means derivative exists. Okay. It is differentiable there.
We studied that analytic means it has a power series and holomorphic means its derivative exists. And then that
yes. Both are same language, holomorphic, analyticity. One can also say if its power series exists in the radius of convergence. Because of Abel's theorem and Taylor's theorem, if we combine, actually it is same. Analytic means it is a power series expansion. This is also a definition one can consider. Some authors consider this and then they prove other things. That is also possible. Okay. So here what happens, instead of circle within this delta circle, one can replace this by any arbitrary simple closed contour not passing through the point A. That is important. This is actually the more general form of Cauchy's integral formula. This is what the first remark. The second remark, the Taylor's theorem also justifies the Maclaurin expansion like this for exponential z. These are well known, sine z, cosine z like this. In real analysis, we know all these things, and complex analysis also same power series is possible for this trigonometric functions and exponential function and many more functions. And we know the formula nth derivative at 0 over n factorial. So that coefficient can be computed. Nth coefficient can be computed. Of course, depending on function and how complicacy will be there, these are simple functions. So therefore, this can be computed easily. So now one example we discuss, then we go to the proof of Taylor's theorem. So let us find the Taylor's expansion of 1 over z square about z equal to 2. About z equal to 2. It is very simple way, another easier way to deal such problems. Instead of doing derivative, then finding coefficients, and some other way also one can do, easier way. Like 1 over z square function is there, so we just, rational functions, it is of this, this type we do, p by q form, then it is easy somehow. So z we write, here 2 subtracted and added 2, nothing else in the denominator, and whole square is there as it is. Because we need to have about z equal to 2, therefore z minus 2 factor is required. That is the reason we subtracted 2 and added 2. Now this 2 we need to take out, so that we get this 1 plus z minus 2 by 2 form, like series 1 over 1 plus z whole square. That form we need. Therefore in that form it is coming after taking this 2 outside. Then square is there, therefore 4 is coming, and then 2 is divided here, and this will be 1. Now 1 over 1 plus zeta whole square, we know this is summation minus 1 power n plus 1 times z, zeta power n, and zeta is here I am taking z minus 2 over 2. Z minus 2 over 2. This is well known, So in fact, here you can take term by term differentiation of the function 1 over 1 geometric series 1 over 1 plus z, derivative both sides, then you will be getting this also. So this is coming, but this will be valid actually for z minus 2 mod less than 2. Why? Because this series is valid provided z minus 2 by 2 modulus is less than 1. This is convergent for z minus 2 by 2 modulus is less than 1. That means z minus 2 modulus is less than 2. It is coming. So therefore this series is about z equal to 2 and radius of convergence is 2 here. So therefore one can find Taylor's expansion of a specific function about a specific point like this. So whenever rational functions are there, one can compute like this. But if you have complicated function, then one needs to go for the coefficient formula, derivative formula. Okay. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
sir, can we compute the series expansion of 1 upon z square by the formula given in Taylor's series?
Yes. One can compute. About z equal to 2 means instead of f of 0, you need to take f of 2 in the formula. Okay. F of z has some formula. So f of 2 you need to take.
So here fz is 1 upon z square.
F of z is 1 upon z square, yes. Yeah, but about z equal to 2, look at the formula. Yes. That means a will be 2. Small a will be 2.
And the
And
coefficient.
f of z is 1 over z square.
And the coefficient ans are in the form of integral fz.
Integral of that, but this derivative formula one can use because you have f, just differentiate and put a, that means a equal to 2, then compute this. This is also possible. You can check.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. But this is the easiest way. Other way is complicated in the sense depending on function. I mean, even complicated rational function also will have difficulty in computing its derivative. Many terms might come. But here, it's anyway. Of course, in general, it is depending on the function, which one will be easier. The two different way one can compute such Taylor series expansion. And here you see at z equal to 0, it is actually not analytic. And you can see the disk center to radius 2. So within that actually, so analytic, okay, it is possible. That means the maximal disk we can draw about z equal to 2 is just touching the origin. So that is the radius of convergence is 2. This is coming by Taylor's theorem. Anyway, now we go to the proof of Taylor's theorem. Okay, fine. Look at this. Taylor's theorem means we have an analytic function and then we are deriving a power series, okay, within the radius of convergence. So here the original domain is there and then point A is here in the picture, look at, and about this A, I take the maximal disk centered around A. That radius is delta. Now we are choosing one row. A row means from A to, I mean this gamma. Gamma is a circle centered at A with radius rho, and rho is smaller than delta. Arbitrarily you can take. Rho is smaller than delta. Now we take one arbitrary point Z inside this circle gamma. Inside this circle gamma. Smaller circle gamma. Z. Okay. Now let us take, we will be denoting small r, this distance, Z minus A modulus. It's a small r. That means small r will be less than rho and rho will be less than delta. So that will come. Now Cauchy's integral formula we can apply here over gamma. This is the Cauchy's integral formula because Z is inside this gamma. Look at the picture. Z is inside this circle gamma. Therefore, f of z we can write in terms of integral formula over gamma. So this is what Cauchy's integral formula. Okay. This you know. Now, this is what I just explained, that Z minus A modulus is equal to R, I take. Then by construction of gamma, what is obvious? That R is actually less than rho. Rho is actually zeta minus A. Sorry, yeah, zeta minus A, because zeta is actually varying over gamma. By the integral formula here, the equation 4, zeta is actually on gamma. So therefore, zeta minus A modulus is actually rho, that is the radius. But since Z is inside this circle, therefore Z minus A modulus will be less than that rho. So we have this quantity. So why we are getting, we are considering this relation, the trivial relation, of course, because we wanted to write this denominator quantity in the formula 4, zeta minus Z, in terms of some quantity. We need to rewrite that so that it's series expansion. We can write, and I mean some kind of geometric series we'll be getting where terms are like 1 over 1 plus Z form, 1 over 1 minus Z form. So where mod Z is less than 1, then only we can say this is geometric series, and sorry, its series representation is actually summation Z power n. Same concept we want to use, because we need this factor Z minus A modulus over zeta minus A modulus is less than 1. So that quantity we can take W. So modulus of W is less than 1. So in the series expansion, that is the reason we are considering this. Let us see. This is what it is written. 1 over zeta minus Z, this quotient in a series form we want to write, and then using the geometric series idea. In geometric series, we need some quantities less than 1. So here in this relation, if we divide this zeta minus A modulus other side, then this ratio will be less than 1. So therefore, we need to use this idea in this Cauchy's integral formula. Then simplifying step by step, then we will be arriving to the destination. Let's see. 1 over zeta minus Z. Denominator is zeta minus Z. Only that part I am considering first. 1 over zeta minus Z. But we need to put A in between, because A is there. This relation in A is there. So therefore, what happens? I subtract A and add A. Nothing else. Then what is happening? And zeta minus A I take common in the denominator. Then zeta minus A will be divided in the second factor here, and first factor will remain as 1. Will become 1. So 1 minus Z minus A and over zeta minus A. So therefore, this is simple elementary calculation. So now see, because of this relation we have Z minus A over zeta minus A modulus is less than 1 in the from the previous page. What it follows, that 1 over zeta minus Z is as it is, then equal to 1 over zeta minus A is as it is, then 1 over 1 minus W form, and W mod is less than 1. So it is a geometric series in W, but W is Z minus A over zeta minus A. So therefore, Z minus A over zeta minus A is there. So 1 plus W square plus W power n plus so on. This is actually geometric series. Now, geometric series, so up to n minus 1 factor we keep, and remaining term, just Z minus A over zeta minus A power n, we take common, then we will be getting remaining is again geometric series. So therefore, that can be written 1 over 1 minus zeta minus A by zeta minus, Z minus A by zeta minus A. Is it clear, this part? Because here, from here, I take this common. Then first factor will be 1, second factor will be Z minus A by, these factors will get. So therefore, again, geometric series, this is converging to this function, it is coming. Is it clear, or some doubt is there here? Any doubt, please ask me.
So, sir, when you take z minus a upon xi minus a power n common, then the factor will be in the product or in denominator? You have written in denominator.
Denominator, no. See, what term will be there? Suppose from here, look at this one. Suppose
Yes, sir.
from here, 1 will be there because this is taken out. Then second factor, because power n plus 1 is there, so we will be getting this one, z minus a over zeta minus a.
Yes.
Indeed. The next term, this whole square will be getting. Continue, infinite series.
Okay,
That
so
is
some
actually geometric series.
sum of that term. So.
Yeah, 1 over 1 minus w. My w is here, z minus a over zeta minus a.
Yes.
Okay. And then this is the factor we took common, that is already there in the numerator. There is nothing to worry. Okay, good. So now from this formula, fourth is actually, now we put that expressions here in this Cauchy's integral formula, we put that. Then take now integration term by term over gamma. Let's see. So first factor is coming, f of zeta d zeta is there, then zeta minus a is there. Then z minus a, second factor z minus a is coming out, and 1 over zeta minus a whole square is there. And then n minus 1 factor is there, z minus a power n minus 1 coming out because that is independent of zeta. And then f of zeta d zeta was zeta minus a power n from there. Okay. Okay, you can verify that. And plus the remainder term is actually this quantity is coming. Like this it will come. Z minus a by zeta minus a whole power n, then f of zeta d zeta by zeta minus z. This factor will come. F of z. What was f of z? F of z is this one. So 1 over zeta minus z we computed, and that to be substituted there and simplified. Then we get all these things. Now again we apply Cauchy's integral formula here. In each term we can apply Cauchy's integral formula. What is the first factor? 1 over 2 pi I integral over gamma f of zeta d zeta by zeta minus a. This is nothing but f of a. Here f prime a will be there. Just a minute. Sir, I am in a class. 6:30. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, so then each term we apply Cauchy's integral formula again to get the original, the required formula, Taylor series expansion. First is f of a, second is f prime a is coming, z minus a factor is there, then third and so on, so it will come. So remainder term is there. So once we prove this remainder term goes to 0, then we can have when n tends to infinity, then we can have this infinite series. Okay. So anyway, one can also say inductively it follows, but we can prove that remainder term goes to 0 in usual sense. Now here what happens? Modulus of f of z is continuous on the compact set gamma. Gamma is a compact set, closed and bounded. Thus, what happens? F of z modulus has maximum, say m on gamma. F of z modulus is less than or equal to m on gamma. Okay. So because remainder term tends to 0, we want to prove. So remainder term we just need to take modulus. Then less than or equal to this modulus we take inside the integral, and then applying these quantities and all, we are going to prove that that is going to 0. That is the idea. So just this is it. So remainder term was this one, and everywhere modulus I have taken inside, then that is the reason less than or equal to is there. The standard properties of integrals. M is coming from upper bound for f of zeta, 1 gamma, then 2 pi is as it is, z minus a mod is r, small r, zeta minus a mod is rho, as it is, then d zeta modulus is there, and denominator zeta minus z modulus is there. Now we need some lower bound for zeta minus z modulus, so that we can take this outside after taking the lower bound. So that is it. So zeta minus z modulus, we can write, just subtract a and add a, then we get two factors, zeta minus a and z minus a. Again use your triangle inequality. So zeta minus a is larger, therefore we keep zeta minus a first, then minus z minus a modulus. Now here this is equal to, first quantity is rho, we know, and z minus a modulus is actually r. So rho minus r we are getting. So therefore zeta minus z modulus is bigger than equal to rho minus r. So that quantity we can take outside again. Then only remaining is integral over gamma d zeta modulus. That is actually length of gamma. Length of gamma is 2 pi delta. Gamma is delta, or am I right? Let's see. What is the radius for this gamma circle? Rho. Yes, rho. Because inside delta neighborhood we are taking rho circle. Okay, that is thing. So therefore this quantity is actually 2 pi rho. So that is the reason m rho is there, and then r by rho power n is there already, and 2 pi get cancelled, and rho minus r is coming. So because r by rho is less than 1, so this quantity limit will be 0 as n tends to infinity. So therefore the remainder term is actually tending to 0 as n tends to infinity, and hence we get the power series. So therefore f of z is like this, we proved. And in fact, as I already mentioned, this coefficient formula is coming directly from Cauchy's integral formula, this integral formula. Okay. So there is nothing to prove for this. So this proves the Taylor's theorem. Yeah, any question till now from this Taylor's theorem proof we can discuss? Yeah, please.
Sir, in the proof of Taylor's theorem, once we get 1 upon xi minus z in geometric series expansion.
Yes. Yeah, this one.
Yes, this one, sir. So in the bracket term, we can write it summation from n equal to 1 to infinity z minus I upon xi minus a power n, and infinity terms, and then put it into the function. So why are you taking that Rn and then tending to infinity that Rn?
Yeah. But see, thing is here, both are actually same. Like in Taylor's theorem, if you more general form of Taylor's theorem, the remainder term actually the nth term onwards, that term onwards will be actually 0. That is the reason this Cauchy's criterion, actually it is coming from Cauchy's criterion. Cauchy's criterion for uniform conversion, the remainder term tending to 0, as we discussed previously. So that's the reason even in numerical analysis you will see remainder terms are there most of the times in series. Those things will go to 0. So both are actually equivalent in that sense, but here in more standard way it is improved. Okay. So this proof I have taken from Alfor's book. Anyway, so one can, of course, many books contains. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. That means we are saying that for large n, almost we do not have any terms. Okay, so infinitely it goes.
Because many books writes directly, they do not
Yeah,
consider the current term.
Yes, but directly sometimes the question of convergence is, when we take inequality, especially triangle inequality, or of course here inequality is not there directly, all equality. So that's the reason, if we take directly, then inductively we need to prove. First finite sum we prove, then finally we need to take the limit. So directly taking, sometimes it's not the good way of writing. Sometimes, for example, triangle inequality or infinite sum may not be valid. We do not know. Therefore, first we take nth partial sum, then we use triangle inequality, then finally we take the limit. That's the appropriate way of doing this. Okay. So anyway, it depends, author to author. So that's more standard way is this way. Okay. So that's all the proof. Now we discuss some example. Two examples are there we discuss, and then we stop. So one is find the values of these two series, summation n over 2 power n and summation n square over 3 power n. Okay. So quite interesting. It's easy, of course, because this function is called Kobe function. Because this is most popular in univalent function theory or geometric function theory in general, we say. So within the disk of radius 1 or within the unit disk, this series is valid. One can compute. From a geometric series, one can compute by taking derivative once, then multiplying with z. Then one can get like this. Then here if we put z equal to, here if we put z equal to 1 by 2, then we are getting n over 2 power n. Here. So just left hand side we simplify, that will be your value. Simple. Okay. So what is the value? We just compute 1 by 2 times over 1 minus 1 by 2 whole square equal to 2. If we simplify this, it will be just 2. Similarly, differentiating this expression once again, then z power n minus 1 and n square will come here. N square z power n minus 1. Then we multiply z. So therefore n square z power n will come. Then we put z equal to 1 over 3, because within this disk any value you can take. But since I have asked 1 over 3 power n, therefore put z equal to 1 over 3 after taking derivative and multiplying with z. That is the idea. Then actually this left hand side simplification gives you this term, and right hand side gives summation n square z power n. Then put z equal to 1 by 3, then we will get the value. So this value is coming 3 by 2. Something like this, question might be asked somewhere. So the final example, this is Fibonacci sequence. And similarly, many recurrence relation may be given to you in terms of coefficients. Then find the radius of convergence. This kind of problems also quite interesting. First, we can compute f of z. What is f of z? Then how to compute radius of convergence? Because f of z, we are computing about, this Taylor series is about origin. Then once we compute f of z, then we take the points where f is actually not analytic. There may be many points where f is not analytic, or denominator of f of z is 0. Zeros of denominator f of z. So we compute. That means those points actually function is not analytic. Then from the origin, because it is about origin, from origin we take the nearest points. So up to that distance is actually radius of convergence, because beyond that it will not be convergent. Okay. So the solution is like this. So to apply, we need to apply this recurrence relation. So therefore, if f of z is an an in terms of an plus 2, so that we can apply this. That is the idea. So f of z is like this. We are rewriting an in terms of s. Therefore, n starts from 0 now. Earlier it was n from 2. So here, now we replace this recurrent relation here. Z power n plus 2 is there. And now we have, two factors here, an plus 1, then an. That, if we write like this, z plus z times summation, n equal to 0 to infinity, a n plus 1, z power n plus 1, then last factor is z square we take common, a n z power n is coming. Okay. Because here n plus 2 was there, so z square we take outside, a n z power n, and here take z outside, so z power n plus 1 will be there in the middle factor, this one. So therefore, because f of z, we have this series, f of z is this one, z plus summation n equal to 2 to infinity a n z power n. Or one can write n equal to 1 to infinity a n z power n, because a1 is 1 given. Or one can also write n equal to 0 to infinity a n z power n, because a0 is 0. So there is no harm. So therefore, using that, one can write this is equivalent to first factor is z, second quantity is z times f of z. This is f of z. Third is actually f of z. So from here, one can compute what is f of z is this one, z over, by taking fz common throughout, z over 1 minus z square. This is a quotient, this rational function. And we see the zeros of these denominators are actually 1 plus minus root 5, I guess, by 2. So the nearest point will be root 5 minus 2 by 2 from the origin, because the series is about origin. So from the center, we need to take the nearest point where function is not analytic. So where denominator is vanishing, their functions are not analytic. So it's a quadratic equation, denominator equal to 0 will be quadratic equation. We can solve easily. Then we obtain, I think, 1 plus minus root 5 by 2. So, but nearest point will be this one. The distance is actually root 5 minus 1 by 2. So, yeah. So, in fact, the distance from the origin, the center of the disk, to the nearest point where function f is not analytic is the radius of convergence. This is the way we compute. Okay. Now, one exercise here for you, very easy, and hint is already there. So, if a series diverges at a point, then outside, beyond that point, thus, if a series is divergent at a particular point, then beyond that point, outside the disk, beyond that point, series will be divergent. This is this is the reason it is used here. Okay, therefore, we are taking the nearest point where function is not analytic, because beyond that, series will be divergent and function will not be analytic. Anyway, so this is very simple exercise for you. You can try using contradiction method. And I think I'll stop it here. Thank you so much. And if you have any question, we can discuss.
So, any questions?
Sir, there is one question in my mind.
Yeah.
If the function is analytic in the annulus domain, then we can write the Taylor series.
Sorry. F is analytic in
any annulus domain, in any ring-shaped region, then we can write the Taylor series. But
no, not Taylor series. That will be Lorentz series. It will be tomorrow. I will explain that.
Yes. Suppose the function is analytic inside a circle. Then we can write the Taylor series. Right?
Yes.
But if can we think in reverse order? Suppose the Taylor series of a function exists, then we can say anything about analyticity of that function.
That is what Abel's theorem we explained today. We discussed first.
Yes.
Let me go to that page, the remark page after Abel's theorem. Abel's theorem says that we have a series and then the corresponding converging function is actually analytic, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that is what the remark is here. Remark, you see. So we proved that every Taylor series is convergent to an analytic function within its radius of conversion. This is the question you are asking. Abel's theorem we are proving. But however, Taylor's theorem says opposite. Yeah, that is what Taylor's theorem also, converse is also true. But within the radius of convergence, both way. That is the reason some author consider a function f is called analytic if it has a Taylor series expansion. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, within the radius of convergence, yes. Any next question?
Sir, could you please explain once more, sir, what is the difference between convergence, absolute convergence, and uniform convergence? Because I wanted to know if a given series is convergent in a particular up to say mod z less than r, where r is the radius of convergence. Can we say that the series is absolutely convergent there in the same region?
No. See, these are very familiar, very basic. That absolute convergence implies convergence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have learned. But and we know that convergence. Yeah.
Take an example: summation n equals to 1 to infinity minus 1 power n by n.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In real analysis, it is okay for me. But when it comes to power series, can we say that the series is uniformly convergent for any value of rho, such that mod z is less than rho? Say, for example, if we are taking a series which is having a radius of convergence 1, can we say that the given series is uniformly convergent for all the values of z such that mod z is less than 1?
Now, this theorem says within each compact disk, set, it will be uniformly convergent. Okay.
Yes, sir. But
if your series is absolutely convergent within this, then we can have this uniform convergence within compact disks within that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Suppose it is absolutely convergent within this disk mod z less than r. Then if rho you are getting, taking any rho in between, then within that compact disk your series will be convergent uniformly.
Yes, sir. So does that mean that if the radius of convergence is infinity, the series will be uniform convergence in all the compact disks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Yeah, R can be infinity, yes. Like trigonometric functions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So, sir, for uniform convergence, always we have to take a disk.
Yeah, this theorem says, but of course, one can find region of convergence, not necessarily disk always, but this theorem, particularly power series theorem, says it is a disk. Yeah. But of course, one can say within each compact subset within the disk, it is also uniformly convergent. Yes. All right. Any more question?
So, are there any questions? Gayan Chandra, Asif, do you have any question?
No, sir, it's clear.
Sir, in the third part, yes, sir. In the third part of Abel's power series theorem, sir, it's in mod z less than or the sum of the series analytic function. The derivative can be obtained by term-wise differentiation, sir.
Yes.
Is this term-wise differentiation valid when it is uniform convergence or the absolute convergence only?
In both. See, because series is absolutely convergent within this radius capital R.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And even smaller disk also, it is absolutely convergent. But in fact, smaller compact disk, it is uniformly convergent.
Exactly, sir.
Yes,
sir,
yes.
I mean, sir, is this term-wise term by term differentiation valid in mod z less than or mod z less or equal to rho for some rho
Mod z less than r. Only convergence is enough here. Radius of convergence. Okay. Mod z less than r. Of course, for the derived series also, one can prove the derived series has radius of convergence r. That is the reason we discussed already. The last part, derived series has the same radius of convergence.
Yes, sir. That's true. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, here term by term differentiation is valid even if we have only absolute convergence, right, sir?
Sorry?
Without uniform convergence, we can have term by term differentiation, sir. Here.
Only convergence is enough.
Okay, sir.
Sir?
Yeah, please.
So what can we say about compact subset of its region of convergence? So there it will not be uniformly convergent.
I could not understand your question.
So instead of
Rohit,
taking this...
Rohit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please proceed. Please proceed. Please proceed.
So instead of taking this disk, so what if we take region of convergence and its compact subset? So will this theorem will fail there?
No, but then how to study radius of convergence? It talks about radius of convergence. Okay.
Yes,
if
sir.
you take a region of convergence, then you can choose maybe the maximal disk inside the region. Then within that disk you can study. But here particularly within a disk it says because
will not exist, sir. So in that disk maximal will not exist.
Rohit, for example, you take a power series. So take Z1 is a point. Okay, suppose the power series is summation a n z to the power of n. It is written at the origin, about origin. Suppose if the power series converges at Z1, it converges for mod Z less than mod Z1.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. That I understand.
See the last,
suppose if it...
Sorry. See the last statement. Suppose series is divergent at a point,
I understood.
Then outside the disk it is divergent. Okay.
Sir, but what if we take like summation 1 Zn by n? So, and if we take a disk inside that and take a line joining to -1, minus x-axis. So then there it will...
Could you please repeat your question?
So like if we take summation z to the power n by n series, and it is convergent in -1, no, sir? So if we take that one disk, compact disk inside, and join the -1 with that x-axis to that disk, that will also be compact. Will that series will be uniformly convergent there?
See, when we talk about series, so only we will have radius of convergence, or when we talk about uniform convergence within a circle, we don't talk about beyond that. But when we take a particular function, that time we can study region of analyticity, region of all these things, convergence, all these things. But when a function, for example, let's say some concept is there called analytic continuation. So there it will come some beyond discussions, but not now. Function is different from when one function is equal to a power series. That means it should be always within a disk, within the radius of convergence, not beyond that.
Okay.
This is about power series only, nothing else.
See, if you substitute any value to the left hand side and right hand side, within this disk, it agrees the values. Okay. So beyond the disk, if you substitute the value on the left hand side, right hand side, it is not agreeing the both the values.
Yeah. That is the reason, at the beginning, one statement was there. Yes. We find that every power series converges inside a circle and diverges outside the same circle. Okay. Outside the same circle, it diverges. We cannot write that as some other function. That's the reason, circle is important here.
Sir, actually, I am not talking about point outside, no, sir. Sir, we are taking that maximum circle, like summation z to the power n by n, and take a point in the boundary and join that compact disk with a line.
That is what you are extending, right?
Yes, sir.
See, that is actually analytic. See, analytic continuation concept is there. For instance, you take 1 over 1 minus z, this function. This function, if we write power series, then we need to take this restriction, mod z less than 1. Otherwise, simply z is not equal to 1 is enough. Okay, we can extend analytically. We can continue to the whole complex plane minus 1.
I think Rohit, when you are saying summation z power n by n,
yes,
so at minus 1 it converges. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Therefore, in mod z less than 1 it converges.
Yes, sir.
At 1 it diverges. Therefore, mod z greater than 1 it diverges. Therefore, what is the maximum radius you can get? 1. Therefore, that is the 1 is the radius of convergence.
Yes.
That is what, if we have a rational function, we take zeros of denominator. Here, zeros of denominator is 1 in this case. So, up to 1 from the center origin, it will, the radius of convergence. Within that, it is convergent. And that will both will be agreeing. 1 over 1 minus z and summation z power n. So, yeah. But anyway, when we talk about power series, we restrict to circle.
I think Swadesh, you can just off the screen so that you can have interaction with the participants.
Sorry?
You can stop the presentation so that you can have interaction with
Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, can we expand a function in terms of Taylor series about infinity as well?
About infinity?
Yeah.
Okay, then we must understand what is neighborhood of infinity. Okay. Neighborhood of infinity is actually the outside of a disk. We take a larger number R outside of a disk.
That means we have to take the region like the mod z is less than infinity, such type of thing?
No, mod z bigger than R.
Bigger than R, yeah.
Yeah, that is neighborhood of infinity.
But anyway, in that case, I think we get a Laurent series expansion.
Yes. Laurent series. Tomorrow we'll discuss that.
Yes.
Laurent series, yes.
Okay, sir. Okay.